Okay, great. Thank you for attending the moderator's meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the format for the special town meeting, which will be occurring on Monday, October 7th. And first I would like to discuss very briefly the motions that are going to be made. My understanding is that there will be two motions. The first motion will be for a renovation, and the second motion will be for a new building. Nina, Chris, and I had a conference call this afternoon, and we thought that in order for the second motion, the motion with respect to the warrant, to work properly, we would have to have two contingent motions. One motion would be made in the event that Article 1 fails. So the motion with respect to Article 2, one would be a motion that would be made if Article 1 had failed. And that would be a motion that $5,000 be assigned to perform the building design research. If Article 1 passes, then the motion with respect to Article 2 would be for $200,000.
I am confused.
Yeah. But, I'm sorry?
So I'm confused by that.
Okay. Well, the thought is that if Article 1 passes, you're going to need an additional amount for Article 2?
Right.
5,000.
Did I get that right?
Article 2, you're going to get 5,000
No.
for Article 1. 5,000 for Article 1.
Right.
Well,
But only if
not approved, then you only need 500,000. For 5,000, sorry, for Article 2.
So,
Ms. Moderator, if I may.
I'm sorry? Yeah, sure.
So what our
Anita.
directions were that the requested appropriation from town meeting would be only an additional $5,000 if they go forward with only one of the options, or $400,000 if they were going forward with both of the options.
Yes.
So the only way we could envision structuring this was you have Article 1, you only need $5,000 to get up to the $200,000 for the renovation study. And then with Article 2, it depends how much you need in addition to that $200,000 depends on what happens with Article 1. So if Article 1 fails, meaning they vote not to do that, you still have 195 in the kitty. You only need the additional 5,000. If Article 1 passes, then you're going to be asking for the full 200,000 to pass both, or they vote down the 200,000. They don't want to do both. They vote it down, so they only want to proceed with Article 1 study at 200,000. That's the way we had envisioned it in earlier meetings.
so that's how I understood it to be.
Is that not how the committee sees it?
It's confusing, right?
It is.
But I
It
think this simplifies it, because you say if you pass one, give us another, we need another 5,000, which
Right.
brings the 195 up to 200.
If
If you pass 2, then we need the other 200,000.
Right, to get the 4.
Right. The two is just an up or down vote for, if one passes, then 2 is just an up or down vote for the additional 200,000.
Correct.
You would, if one passes, you'd never be in a position of just adding $5,000 for a new construction study.
It's either up to 5,000 for either warrant.
Right. But that's not how the motions are set up. They can't be set up that way because there's two separate articles.
So 5,000 with one plus the 195 is your 2.
Right.
If yes on 2, so you get 2 yeses, you need 200,000.
That's right. So we're going to have alternate motions for Article 2.
So,
And,
Only two.
yeah, and only 2, right.
but if you vote no on one, if
If
one
one
is
is
no.
no.
If one fails, it's 5,000 for 2.
Right,
If one passes, it's 200,000 for 2.
right.
Now, I'm glad that the Board of Selectmen are memorizing this, because that leads me to the next point about the meeting. Who is going to make the motions? Andy, it's my understanding that the Warrant Committee has decided not to take a position.
Correct.
Okay. It seems to me that since the warrant committee is going to not be taking a position on this, the Board of Selectmen should be making a motion.
That makes sense. So then will the warrant committee even be on the stage? You will be?
You will be, right, because I expect that you'll still act as a source of information if people have questions about any of the financials.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So then
Jim, does it make sense that a member of the warrant committee read the initial motion about the conduct of the meeting?
Yes,
This is-
yes. So with respect to identifying the source of funding,
Because that's typically read by a member of the,
it is, and thanks for reminding me, Kate. I think that the first, the motion that we never number,
right.
the unnumbered motion should be made by somebody on the warrant committee. And who would you like to have do that?
I'll make it.
Okay, Andy will make it, and who will second it? Gordon will second it, okay.
you guys will be page one. Okay.
Okay, and Chris, what you'll be doing when the motions are prepared, you'll actually be putting in the names of the individuals. Okay. And then for Article 1, Robin, will you be making a motion for both of these? Okay. And who will be seconding?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Robin will make the main motion for each article, and John will be seconding. Okay. Now, yes, sir.
Can I make a suggestion? I think you are going to explain what we just discussed at the beginning of the meeting. Somebody should discuss that, I think, at the beginning of the meeting.
Now, I think it's...
People are going to get very...
Well, I think it's going to be confusing if we do it at the beginning of the meeting and people don't understand exactly what they're voting on. So the way that I thought, and thanks for asking that question, because it's a good segue into how we should actually proceed with the order of the discussion. My thought was that after the first unnumbered motion is made, that before we have a motion with respect to Article 1 or Article 2, you would make your presentation.
I
Yes,
think
that's right.
it has
Right.
to work that way.
Right.
I think we have to have because within your presentations, you go through in
And
detail
so,
what people are voting
But
against.
I think it does, and I know what the presentation looks
Oh,
like
yeah.
as of this second, but still a work in progress. But I think the discussion we just had was excellent, and I think we ought to have a very similar kind of graph going up in the beginning, talking about the money and showing the money in the article.
So what we could do.
We can do that.
Well, what we could do
We actually
is
have
you
slides.
could, you have slides, but I think after you give your presentation and right before you make the motions, I can recap what you're gonna be voting
Excellent,
on.
with a slide.
Yes, and I can have
I think a
a slide.
slide would be very helpful.
So I'll just recap and then I'll read the motions.
Okay.
It'll be just like the Brexit charts that are.
Right, right. It will be identical, very small print.
Let's not compare ourselves to the British government at this point.
so the first part of the presentation, I actually do a discussion about what we're voting on, what the possible votes are,
Right.
and what the impact is as
Right.
we go through the money. So we go through that piece, and then I talk a little bit about what I've learned from visiting 15 or 20 communities over the past 7 months, and then hand it off to Ford, who actually does the
Right.
presentation.
So you're going to speak before Ford?
Yes. And then what I would have to do, because of the way the structure of the amphitheater is, I'll have to leave the stage and go down and work the slides before it, so that we have to.
Okay.
Because the idea consistent with how we've done forums, is we finish the presentation and then we hand it back to you and we do Q&A.
Right. Well, yeah, and then actually at that point, Bob has contacted me. Bob, you wanted to make a presentation on behalf of the Council of Aging at some point. Have you any thought about the timing for that? Is there any particular time that you would like to do that, or?
It would seem to me it would be after the presentation, the main presentation.
Okay.
But I don't know whether you want to introduce, first warrant. I could do it after that.
No, I think I would rather have, if you're amenable, I would rather have you follow Bob and Ford.
That would be great.
And how long would you like to talk for?
Well, I'd like up to 10 minutes.
Okay,
I know we had 2 minutes 2
Right.
years ago, and
Right.
it wasn't enough.
could you do it in 8 minutes?
If I say yes, we can say 6?
No,
8 minutes.
8 minutes. And the reason I'm suggesting 8 is because that's what we normally allow for groups. If you look at on the town website, we put together a discussion of town meeting procedure. And in there, we talk about if there are organized groups wishing to make a presentation with the permission of the moderators, they will be allowed up to 8 minutes to make a presentation. So it's just consistent with what we have posted on our web.
The only
Yeah,
caveat that I make is if I have 8 minutes and somebody else chooses to speak, I would hope that they would not have more than 8 minutes.
No, and they'll have 2 minutes. Because you're going to be speaking on behalf of an organized group, the Council of Aging. Nina, did you want to?
No, the only question I had is I assume the Council on Aging presentation will be applicable to both the renovation and the new construction option more broadly, or is it talking in favor of one or the other?
There is a bias, but it will be talking about both.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, do you anticipate recreation having a similar type of a role?
They have not approached me. They have not approached me. If they do, we can discuss that. But they have not. I have not heard from them at all.
We have had many meetings, as you know, on this, and there's been lots of different groups that have voiced different questions, concerns, suggestions. So I would anticipate that that Mr. Applin's bell may get used.
Get
Okay.
broken in this
Get
meeting.
broken in this time. And I do agree with what Bob said, that we really have to be judicious about limiting
Right.
the discussion to 2 minutes.
Yeah, we will try our best.
Well, the battle plan is simply that it's 2 minutes, and then there'll be 1 ding with 30 seconds to go and 2 dings at the end of 2 minutes, and then Mr. Moderator gets to decide extension.
Have you discussed between Dave and possibly town council the amount of time that you envision giving to each of these articles as a?
No, I mean, it's hard, you can never anticipate. I'm hoping that after the presentation by Ford and Bob, and after the presentation by Bob for the Council of Aging, that at that point we'll open it up for discussion. And as we've done in the past, we'll have 3 microphones. There'll be a microphone for those who, when we open up for discussion, we'll have the motion first. So
Right,
first
that's
motion will be made. We'll then have discussion and questions on the first motion.
So right before the motion, it probably makes
You're
sense
gonna
for
do
me just
yours.
to remind
Yeah.
people what you're voting on.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Great.
Can I just interject, you are going to have a slide
I
for
will
that.
have a slide. I may just use your slide that you already have.
You can tell.
Jim,
Yeah,
just so you're not surprised in any way, the Council on Aging will advocate for voting for both
that's okay, that's fine,
this part.
that's fine. Yeah,
Between the end of the vote on the first
right.
and the second article, after Robin reads the second article, we go through the same process. Will there be any formal presentations of the second article?
No,
No.
because the
We've already made a
presentation.
Right.
presentation of the
the
first.
Right.
Discussion.
Would you be in favor of making that clear at the beginning of both Bob's presentation and Ford's presentation?
No. And let me explain, because I've been asked about this before. I do not think that my role as moderator is to discuss the relationship of the motions that are being made by the Board of Selectmen
Okay.
in the first instance. Now, after Robin explains the relationship, I feel perfectly free to summarize what she has said at key points during the process so that people can remember or be reminded of the relationship of the articles. But I think that for me to make the first explanation of the relationship of the articles is abandoning my role as a neutral moderator and is taking on more of the role of an advocate or a proponent, which I feel that I can't do.
You're very consistent on that.
Right, right. And, you know, and I think it's a minor point, but I think that it's important. Once you explain the relationship, you know, as I often do before a vote, I'll remind people what they're voting on and what the significance of that is. And I feel perfectly comfortable in doing that. We've done that for the last 30 plus years since I've been in town. But the first instance explaining that relationship is really a managerial issue. It's an issue for the Board of Selectmen, not for me to explain. And you know, I see you turning towards me. Any?
Nope. I agree. That's fine. That's certainly your prerogative as the moderator.
So what I would envision is that we have the discussion, we have the unnumbered motion, then we have the presentation by Ford and Bob, and then a presentation by Bob. After that, I will turn to Robin for a recap and an explanation. Right, an explanation about what we're going to be voting on, and then we'll move to motion 1. The motion will be made. At that point, I may recap what you had just said. You know, as I've often told you, the studies show you have to say it at least 3 times. Right, right. So that would be the second time that would be stated, and then we'll move into a discussion of motion 1. We'll have 3 microphones set up, those opposed, those support, those who have questions. And I'll ask people to queue up behind each of those microphones, and we'll rotate through the microphones. There will be 1 or 2 scouts available for those who are not able to come down to the microphones, who have to stay in their seats, and I'll try to call on them in proportion to how many people are standing in line.
So we talked about this, and we thought that all 4 and I would still be out.
Yeah, and what I would ask, the thing we have to be careful about is to avoid a debate. So don't respond, when somebody asks a question, don't respond immediately. Wait for me to ask if you want to comment on that, because I want to make sure that I'm able to control the flow of the discussion. Otherwise, it can get out of hand pretty quickly. Yeah, Ford.
We're just going to debate Article 2, which is renovation. Not going to even mention new in the discussion.
We are. Well, it's going to have been mentioned in.
Because you said we're going to discuss Article 1.
Which is renovation.
Which is renovation. That means no discussion on new.
Well,
because that would be wrong.
No, but you have to vote.
No, the vote is going to be on Article 1.
Correct.
The first vote.
The first vote. Now, some
the
people.
The discussion, excuse me, in front of that is about the whole thing.
Your presentation.
Your presentation is about the whole thing,
yes.
But the discussion that follows will be focused on Article 1. And during that discussion, some people may say, I am opposed to Article 1 because I think we should move solely to the subject of Article 2 to build a new building. Therefore, I am not in favor of expending funds. Or there may be people who say, hey, I'm in favor of both, and that's why I support Article 1. That's fine. But
I think you're going to have a difficult time.
Why?
Because I think people are going to want to, because we discussed Article 1 and 2 in the presentation.
Right.
They're going to want to discuss Article 1 and 2. To segment it may be difficult for some people.
You have to for the votes.
There's got to be a motion on the floor that's going to be discussed.
Yeah.
So the motion on the floor will be first for Article 1, then that will be discussed, debated, and voted on. Then a motion for Article 2, that gets discussed.
I just think it's going to be challenging.
Well, I think
I can do that, right? I'm worried about people who don't have very little information about them.
I think that this is something that often happens when we're dealing with related articles. In the way we've dealt with it in the past is we give people some room. It's in that for some people, if they're opposed to Article 1 because they think we should move to Article 2, I'm going to allow them to say that. Yes.
Ms. Moderator, how much leniency are you allowed, discretion maybe is the better word, if there is a move to a vote? If you get a motion from the floor to move the vote, do you have discretion?
I have no discretion at all. If somebody moves the question, at that moment, we then move to consider the motion to move the question. We have a vote on it. If it passes, we then move immediately to a vote.
So, back to my previous question.
Right.
Will you, if you can't make, in my words, a summary of the second part at the beginning, and you do have the move to a vote, do you have the discretion to say, I'll take that up after a specific amount of time has gone by from conversation?
What do you mean?
To move, if we're in the first article and you get a move to the vote, and we're only in the beginning of the conversation?
For the first question.
First question.
Right.
In theory, I have the discretion.
I would agree with that. If, for instance, Robin makes the motion and before anyone gets up to speak in favor or against, after the presentations, and someone says, I move the question, I think
I have the discretion to
Jim has the
no.
discretion to say that's inappropriate.
Right. And the way that, to justify it, in this town we have a tradition of the discretion being justified by the moderator. At least, that's the way I remember Mr. Heinlein doing it. I remember Mr. Horwitz doing it. I remember Pam Ellsworth doing it. So consistent with that, I would feel compelled to explain why I'm exercising my discretion in that manner. And in that scenario that you posited, it's really because it's an abuse of the process to deny any discussion on the motion that's going to be voted. And that's unfortunately the way I would have to explain it. So I would hope that somebody would not make that motion, because I think it would be rather embarrassing for them, but I would feel compelled to state that that's my rationale.
Thank you. That's a perfect answer, and I think having that conversation right now in this forum is a really good thing.
Well, I think people understand that. I mean, we have never had somebody make a motion to move the question before there had been some serious discussion. But and I think that people understand. There are going to be people queuing up. It's rude.
Right.
If nothing else, it is rude for somebody to move the question before anybody has had a chance. So I have absolutely no problem with that, but I hope that we don't have to cross that bridge. Robin, you had your hand up?
Right, so I have an unorthodox question. I'm not sure. I recognize that town meeting has rules and regulations, but the way these articles have been presented and the way the presentation flows is, it's about both. And I'm wondering if it warrants, before making any of the motions, to allow for some discussion about what's being presented. Because if I understand what Bob is saying, the COA presentation is going to be biased towards voting for both. So I wonder if there is some, if it makes sense to allow for some discussion on both articles first, prior to making the motion.
You think, Anna?
So the motion has to be on the floor before there's debate of town meeting.
Okay.
So I would certainly err on the side of having the motion first, and then the debate needs to be focused on what that motion is. I think it's helpful to keep in mind here that Articles 1 and 2 are not mutually exclusive. So this isn't a discussion where someone needs to say, I'm in favor of Article 1 because I don't like Article 2. If they want to speak in favor of one or the other, they get up on behalf of one or the other, or they like this one, they don't like the next one, they can say, I like this one, I think we should vote for this one. you hold that comment on why you don't think new construction is worth it until the presentation on new construction, because these are separate, these are segregated articles that are not tied in results. I know that, of course, practically speaking, there's going to be some natural bleeding of the discussion of should we do one, should we do the other. I think Jim's just saying, look, if someone gets up and tries to talk for 10 minutes about the new construction of a building and why that's really good, he's going to say, you know what, thank you very much, Mr. Smith, why don't you hold that discussion until Article 2.
Right. And that's what we've done in the past. You know, if people start to wonder, we'll say you're really getting into the substance of motion 2. Please save those thoughts for our consideration of motion of the second warrant article.
And I think the fact that they're not tied can help in managing that discussion as well.
Right. And you know, I think that in your presentation, you'll be talking about both, and the fact that they're not mutually exclusive. In Robin's recap, she'll be talking about both. When I ask for the motion, I may, after it's made, I may at that point again remind people that they're not mutually exclusive. And then certainly when I call for the vote, I will again remind people that they are not mutually exclusive. So that will be 4 times that we'll have said it. Yeah, right. I appreciate everybody in this room has spent a lot of time already thinking about how we should proceed, and I really feel pretty comfortable that this is the best way, given that the format is that we have to have a motion on the floor for something for people to vote on. We could not have both motions considered at the same time. It just would be too unwieldy. It wouldn't work.
It's just really a matter of the explanation.
Right, right.
Are there going to be handouts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you going to have Robin slide as one of the handouts so that Jim gets his point across 3 times?
I think that would be nice if we could do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And Felicia, also our handout on town meeting process.
All set.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's what you want. You want
The
a picture.
handouts have been out for a long time, so they're going to be stock up for people to have, and they're on the website right now.
Understood, but after the Brexit chart,
That's
explaining to people on, you
a
know,
good idea.
So,
Okay,
then
so
they'll study it, and then when you go through it, they're going to be familiar with the material and say, oh, this is how it works.
Hopefully.
We
said that how we have is another prep way.
now then if we have a vote with respect to motion 1, then we'll move to the second warrant article. Again, I will ask Robin to make the motion. John will second. And then we'll open it up for discussion again. In the process of opening it up for discussion, I will remind people that they've already heard the presentations from your committee and from the COA on both, the merits of both. And I'll ask, are there any questions or comments? And we'll open it up for discussion there. And again, I would ask you gentlemen to be up at the front, so when questions arise, I'll just direct them to you as the case may be. I don't see any reason, but tell me if you feel otherwise, I don't see any reason when we move into the second warrant article to ask you all to do a recap of what you presented. So I think that it's okay to proceed directly into the discussion, but I'm open, you know, if you feel like there should be a recap, we can talk about it.
No.
Okay, fine. And again, it'll be the same process, yes, Mike, no Mike, question Mike, we'll rotate through, going back and forth. And then we'll, either with somebody, if somebody moves the question, or if it looks like discussion has petered out, we'll vote on that, and that will be the end. I'm expecting that this will be over in 2 hours. Yeah, well, I hope, but I think it was.
But how long are you speaking for?
20 minutes.
20?
Bob,
Yeah, but my intro is 35.
And if you added, you know,
We're
Ron,
under 30
it's going to
minutes.
still be about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We're definitely
For both of you?
Yeah, we begin the presentation now 3 times
Yep.
in the town. It's the same presentation. There are a few tweaks that we're going to Monday finalize it. And we're going to be sending you all copies of the presentation and the slide presentation, hopefully Tuesday.
Now, one thing that I would appreciate your thoughts about is that technically we're voting on a continued study that's going to produce these drawings and estimates. Inevitably, people are going to be making the arguments whether they want renovation, whether they want a new building. My initial thought is to allow them to make those arguments in the reasoning, because it's so closely connected to whether they want to permit the study to proceed or not. But at some point, I feel like they may be beyond the pale. And do any of you have any thoughts about where we should be drawing the line here? Because I think, frankly, that's going to be the hardest thing that we're going to be doing up there. By limiting people to 2 minutes, hopefully, but you know, if somebody's in the middle of it, I would rather not have to cut them off immediately. We'll be ringing the bell. But any thoughts about how far? None? Okay, I guess that's why.
Or in the public forums, have you seen that conversation get sucked into the construction conversation as opposed to the study?
We defer it. If
Okay.
we get a question that comes up that really is a phase 2 sort of question, basically we're saying,
We'll
that
get
will
that.
be addressed at that phase. It's not at this
If people
phase.
make a statement, we're not going to, well, we have to go through Jim anyway, but we're not going to respond.
Okay.
Right.
Even if I think they're wrong, I mean, the facts are wrong, it's a statement, I think we leave it alone.
Okay.
So, Nina, back to the conversation earlier and your comments and your caution to us. We get that all the time. We get the request for cost.
Yeah.
And can you be specific? We've heard that 1,000
Yeah.
times.
So the
And you say that's what the study's for.
Well, that's exactly.
Yeah. Great. That's all.
Direction you want us to go, and we'll give you the detailed cost.
Yeah.
As a heads up, this is a question that is likely to be brought up because it's been asked of me, and that is how much has been spent renovating that building over the last 5 or 10 years? A total.
$2 million.
But
1.7.
That number is available.
that's great, because as long as you have it and you're ready.
And it's bathroom, maintenance, you know,
Just as long as you have it and you're ready, that's all I want.
You know, I think you might get questions about, well, have you considered why have you not considered moving tenants around and all the stuff like, because I've gotten that question. You know, have you given any consideration to some of the licensees that are in the building? And again, we're doing this feasibility study, and during that phase, that's when we'll look into all of this. Because that's going to tell us what space is best needed and how best to utilize the space for the programs.
And yes.
And that makes it hard for the warrant committee. I mean, this is really a question about spending money to get all the facts, right? So that's really what's going on here. And probably wouldn't hurt if we make that point a few times as well.
Right. And then
I'll be making it.
Okay, good, Bob. Okay, so then after, yes, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up, Bob? Or?
No.
Okay, so after we vote on the second one, there'll probably be a motion for reconsideration. And we'll have a brief discussion of that. I try to limit the debate on that. We'll vote on that, and then we'll move to any of the articles that might have been a motion for reconsideration, and then we'll adjourn the meeting. Okay.
2 hours.
Yeah, I'm shooting for 2 hours.
Are we going to have clickers?
Yes, we are having clickers, so that we'll move quickly.
But this time we should do it in the shape of a cricket.
I'll see what I can do about that.
And that's really it. Any other questions or comments?
Jim, the only thing is, Diana is requesting to have presentations by Wednesday, 5 o'clock, if it's possible, because this is going to sneak up on us, and we just want to make sure we're very ready.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. Yes, sir.
I really do think that we should be careful about the timeline. I mean, from the rumor mill, there's a lot of people making arrangements with kids, they come to the meeting,
Oh, yeah.
and they have a little bit of amount of
Right.
time.
Well, that's why we're imposing the minute limits, because we're very cognizant of that.
Good.
And I'm hoping that people from our ad hoc moderators committee will be there with their watches as well to make sure that we're keeping the time well. But many thanks to all of you. I know it's been a lot of work, and there have been a lot of moving pieces. So appreciate your work, and look forward to seeing you in a week. Thank you.
It's only a week.
Yeah.